So here's the thing. The election's coming up, and what's strange about what we're witnessing is this Congress has done nothing to help the people. We're coming out of a pandemic. And this Congress has done everything they can to harm the people, particularly women, the elderly, and the disabled. I'm glad to see public awareness, and I'm glad to see people talking about things like SNAP and, the fact that the Americans are using their corporations to destroy the world and all of that. I'm glad that there's public awareness, that there's actually like the educational level of understanding, that there are people out there who understand well enough. We all know this country is being run by lobbyists and stuff. That's a serious problem. I'm looking at the fact that these Congress people cannot be put in jail, and they should be in jail for treason. A previous video of mine didn't make it for views. I did a 3-part video recently I defined corruption, treason, as well as domestic terrorism. So those are good definitions to look up. But I'm going to say it again. We have a domestic terrorist threat in our United States Congress. The United States is the only country that has student loan debt. So, some of these things, we all know that we're under attack. We all know that our freedoms are being threatened. We all know that we're not being allowed to survive and that we're being forced into a state of servitude. But the problem is we got to figure out how to deal with it. So what we need to do is figure out, because if anybody else has noticed, it obviously seems like there's somebody giving these people orders to execute on a variety of things very quickly. I don't think that these politicians are concerned about re-election. They're doing all this right before the election. I don't think these politicians are concerned about retaining office at all. So we need to figure out who it is that owns these people and is giving them orders. And the problem is, if you look from the beginning of the pandemic all the way up until now, there's about 1,800 seats that have been held in the United States Congress. So we need to figure out who that is that's giving these orders. And it's going to take a lot of people pulling information to figure out who is pulling the strings here. But if we want to be effective and get something done and try to improve the situation, that's, I think, one of the most important things we could do right now with all of this. Who's purchased these politicians? That's a really good thing to know. Let's see what lobbyist groups are behind them. If we could get a list of all of the lobbyist groups that are funding these various politicians and see who has the majority hold on that, I think that would be incredibly useful. That's something I haven't been touching because I simply do not have time for it. But I think collectively, multiple people could get that figured out pretty quickly. How about some teamwork, yeah? One last thing. For those who don't already know this, the current United States Congress has a 15% approval rating. The only governmental entities that the United States has that can hold Congress accountable would be the FBI and the Supreme Court. And they have a clause, there's a law, if I can get it pulled up I will, and maybe make a separate video about it, but there is a law that says that they cannot be arrested. There are almost no punishments for this kind of misbehavior in Congress and no system of accountability. That means that the people need to find a way to hold Congress accountable. We have to find a way to have anti-corruption measures taken for Congress, because as of right now there's really none. And since the Supreme Court as well as the FBI are voted positions with political party affiliation, if anybody hasn't noticed this yet, those offices are currently also corrupted. So if we want to take care of our national security and protect the civilian populace from the domestic terrorist threat as defined, we got to find a way to take the matter into our own hands and hold these people accountable, because we simply cannot be allowing something like this to happen. It is very dangerous for all of us to allow stuff like this to happen. Everybody knows that our government is not for the people or by the people and is bought by corporations. We all know this, regardless of party affiliation. So if we want to settle our problems here, you know, we can start having political debates about other issues later, but right now we're dealing with a domestic terrorist threat, and we need to figure out how we're going to keep the people safe, our families, our friends safe, by figuring out how we're going to deal with this kind of problem, because obviously our own government is so corrupt that it's not going to deal with its own corruption. So then how the hell do we deal with that? And it means that the people, the 600 million something or more population of Americans, has a responsibility to protect their home front right now. Let's start with figuring out who the man behind the curtain is that's been barking orders at these idiots.